So let's talk about Yang for a moment. Go for it.
I want to read. This is another one from a Contributor Appreciation.
Okay.
He says he's an Andrew Yang supporter. Could you stop doing that? That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that other part. I was trying to get it closer to you so you can speak into the mic.
Speak into the mic.
Yeah.
Glad to see you offer a relatively more fair take on him, Andrew Yang, than most other progressive independent media. You should look more at his policies, his one focusing on journalism in particular. But anyway, speaking of journalism, I think your take on his response, Andrew Yang, to the Assange situation is a little off. I'll tell you why and hopefully get to see your response.
All right, so let's take a look at Yang's response to Assange. Somebody asks Yang about prosecution, or I would even argue persecution, of one Julian Assange. My argument is that Assange is a journalist. He's a publisher. He gets information, he publishes that information. Governments hate him doing so because the information tends to pull the covers over things that the government is doing that it doesn't want the public to know about. The United States has been on a campaign to put Assange in prison, and depending on who you talk to, maybe even have him shot or hung. I think that is dramatically problematic, and the fact that even Rachel Maddow and Chuck Todd have come out saying, okay, yeah, this was a problem. It's not because they love Yang, it's because they realize that these charges, these espionage charges, will put them also on the hook for litigation. Assange, facing trial for this, puts all media up for potential charges if they are dealing with whistleblower material. Take a look at this. This was the question that was asked to Yang.
Do you support Julian Assange?
I think Julian Assange should stand trial. I am generally pro whistleblower and pro people that try and call out bad behaviors. But in that particular case, he did end up disclosing some information that really had no useful purpose except for potential damage to our infrastructure, like the undersea cables location and some other things. So I certainly would not be in favor of I think he should stand trial.
Thank you.
No problem.
So his thing is, I think he should stand trial. I don't think he's done anything wrong. Yeah.
He said, well, I'm usually for whistleblowers.
Yeah, but not in this case.
But not today.
And it's like, I don't know what he is talking about, but I disagree with that position entirely. Like, I don't think Assange should stand trial. He's not even an American citizen. And yes, I suppose you could have outlaws to supposedly reach out to the United States. But if our laws reach out to people from the United States, shouldn't also have protections? Meaning, if we are going to reach our hand from the United States to literally drag Assange back to face charges under our laws, shouldn't the protections that those laws also offer extend to Assange? And beyond that point, Assange released factually true information. Always. There's been no situation where Assange has released anything that was false, and he was doing his job. He was a publisher. I fundamentally disagree with this notion that Assange should be
stand trial?
Yeah, should stand trial.
For what?
I get that the government, and this is part of the reason why Obama didn't do it. Like, there's a reason why Obama was sketchy about this, because he was concerned about the espionage laws and how that would affect our media.
But how did Obama feel about it?
He didn't like Assange at all.
Right,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying,
he hated him, but there were certain things places that he wasn't willing to go. And then you deal with Trump, where Trump was literally using WikiLeaks to attack Hillary Clinton during the race, and now he's letting these dogs of war to go after Assange and try to drag him back to the country. I disagree with that. I mean, because if Assange has to stand trial, that means Chelsea Manning also, the squeezing of Manning to some degree is legitimized if Assange has to stand trial. Like, all of those things kind of work in tandem with one another. Right now, Chelsea Manning is literally being charged $1,000 a day and is essentially kept in prison as a torture with this notion that she'll crack eventually, and because she'll crack eventually, we'll be able to keep her in for as long as it takes her to crack. Or as long as the judge believes that there is a potential for her to crack. Think about that for a moment. You can't keep somebody in prison flagrantly. However, you can keep them in prison if you believe they'll crack. How would you know whether or not this individual will crack?
That's interesting.
I mean, it's essentially a loophole that allows you to essentially torture somebody in the prison system. In order for this case to go through, that's legitimate. And I don't think this is legitimate at all. I mean, this is a whistleblower that released information showing our helicopter pilots murdering reporters, Reuters agents. The person didn't even know who they were shooting.
Xavier Foster says, dude, WikiLeaks also was exposing the Iran deal.
Was it? What do you mean? I don't understand the question.
That's the super chat from Xavier Foster.
I don't know what that means.
Says WikiLeaks also was exposing the Iran deal.
I don't quite know what that means. But, I mean, I would say this. I love WikiLeaks. I think Julian Assange is doing God's work. I don't want to see him in prison, nor do I think this prosecution of him has been legitimate. He tried to get asylum. And that's the whole reason he went into the Ecuadorian court. Is Yang saying that asylum claim was illegitimate or irrelevant? I mean, to some degree, all that has to be coming into play. If what Yang is saying here, meaning that he should be prosecuted, is true, I don't think he should be prosecuted.
Now, the question from Ant, the person who submitted the topic suggestion, well, not the question, but the statement that he made was, you should take a look at his other policies. But when you and I were having the conversation beforehand, it kind of boiled down to...
It's irrelevant.
They don't matter. Like, if this is kind of, what do you say? Like, this is a hill you're willing to die on?
Well, yeah, with the hill I'm willing to die on.
Willing to die on.
I guess
like, it doesn't matter if this is his standpoint on Assange.
I mean, there's several issues I have with Yang. I mean, I do think that it will dismantle welfare, at the very least welfare as we know it. I also think, Yang's policy on Palestine is utterly atrocious. I mean, I've heard him talk about this stuff. I mean, I understand he's an Asian man that wants to give people money, but there's a little bit more to the Asian man that wants to give people money. I like Yang. I don't dislike him, so I don't want there to be any kind of thing like that. I like the notion that he's in a race because he's talking about this stuff in an interesting way, and it forces people to respond to something that is unique in the democratic field. I think that's a positive, so don't misunderstand me. I would never vote for him, not in a million years. And, Yang could be just as comfortable running in a libertarian race. I mean, honestly. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't dislike him. By the same token, I would never vote for him. And, I disagree with him entirely on this notion of Assange. That's not the entirety of my reasoning for not voting for Yang. I don't want you to misunderstand me.
Okay.
But I think that position is a fail for me. But that's just for me. Somebody else might be like, yeah, I think Assange should serve trial, so I'm okay with, with the persecution. I don't think that.
All right, so we're going to